Hello and welcome back to another little bonus video. In episode 3 we made a few barrels and sacks, so in this video I'm going to do the usual thing where I'll take those same textures and see if we can use them to make a few other bits and pieces. And the main materials I'll be using in this one are some thin cardboard and a regular drinking straw. Okay then, the first thing we're going to have a go at making is a crude bed. So to start things off, we will need to cut out a strip of the wood texture that's roughly 3/4 of an inch wide. Then we need to take a bit of sandpaper and just rub that over the end of the straw. This is the area where we're going to be gluing the wood texture, and doing this first will give us a better bond between the two. So once we've got it glued in place, and I've just used a glue stick as normal, it should end up looking something like this. Then, using a sharp pair of scissors, we can trim that into 1/4 inch pieces, and we'll need 5 of these. Okay, now that's done, we need to take some more of the plain wood texture and a little bit of the barrel interior and glue both of those to some of the thin cardboard. Next, we'll need to take the plain wood texture and just start cutting that into 1/4 inch wide strips. And we'll need 6 of these to make up the rest of the bed. Once that's done, we'll just trim off any excess white paper on 2 of the pieces, so essentially we're aiming to have these be as long as possible, and then just cut the remaining 4 pieces to roughly 1 inch long. And you can angle the edges of these last 4 ever so slightly, just to give it more of a rustic feel. And now we can start putting it all together. So here's 2 of the longer lengths of cardboard, and here's 4 of the straw pieces. And if we just add a small blob of hot glue to the underside of the cardboard, we can then glue one of the legs in place. So there we go. Then it's just a simple matter of doing the exact same thing for the other 3 legs. Though try not to glue yourself to the cardboard in the process like I did with the first one. But anyway, when you're done you should end up with 2 of these bench-like shapes. Next we need to take one of the bases from the barrel PDF, and I've already mounted this one onto some cardboard beforehand, as I'm pretty sure you don't really need to see me do that, and then hot glue one of these pieces near to one edge. So something like that. Then, before we glue the next one in place, we just need to check how far apart they need to be, and so we'll do this by just resting one of the slats on top, as ideally we'd like these to overhang the edges ever so slightly. And once we've got a rough idea of where it needs to go, we can then hot glue this one to the base. Next, we can apply some glue to the back of the 4 remaining pieces, and then just start sticking them down on top. And as you can see, I'm trying to space them out reasonably evenly, but I'm also laying a few crooked, just to give the impression that it's crudely made. So at this stage, it should be looking something like this. Okay, so next we're going to add an old blanket on top, and for this we'll need approximately a 1 by 1.5 inch piece of the sack texture. Then we need to cut a few little V-shapes along the edges, just to give it a bit of a torn and tattered appearance. And we'll do that along all 4 of the sides, so that we eventually end up with something like this. But it doesn't look much like a blanket at the minute, so we'll scrunch it up and then carefully unfold it. Do the same again, and then lay it on a flat surface and kind of pinch it and squash it together to create a few folds and creases. Then we just flatten out any of the areas where the white of the unprinted side is on show, and it's now ready to be glued in place. So I'll just check its positioning first. Then apply plenty of hot glue to the relevant area, and then just stick it down. And when we're finished, it should result in something like that. But we're not quite done with this one yet, and if you remember, we should still have one of the straw pieces left over, and we've also got this barrel interior that we glued to some thin cardboard. So if we mark out a small circle on this piece, and here I'm just using a 12mm washer, and yeah, I'll really need to buy one of those circle stencils for this kind of thing. Then just cut that circle out, We don't need to be too particular with this. And now we've got enough pieces to make a small stool. So I'll just add a bit of hot glue to the underside and then stick the straw down in the centre. And as I say, we can use this as a stool or a small bedside table or anything like that. And once you've given the glue a few seconds to dry, the only thing left to do is to stick it down right next to the bed. And there you have it. I think we'll call this one done. Okay, so now we're going to have a go at making a bit of a rubbish pile. And here I've got one of the barrels that I made in episode 3, but as you can see, I've left the ends open. So I'm just going to squash the barrel down a little bit, just so that I can take a pair of scissors and then cut a jagged line between the two metal bands. Next, we need to get the barrel back into its circular shape. And then if we cut some little V shapes along the jagged edge, we should end up with a barrel that looks like it's been broken apart. And I'm going to do that 2 or 3 times. So here's one that I've already got finished, and you should be able to see that I've also glued the bottom of the barrel in place. Okay, so here's the broken barrel, and here's a few wooden planks that are similar to those we made for the bed, but they've been cut out in a slightly more irregular shape. And here's another scrunched up blanket. Then all we need to do is hot glue those down to another base, and we've got ourselves a nice little junk pile, which is ideal for a giant rat or anything like that to leap out of and surprise your players. Okay, so we've made a bed, we've also made some rubbish. Now we're going to have a go at making a set of shelves. And the first thing we're going to do is cut a couple of strips of cardboard that are 3/8 of an inch wide. Then we're going to measure out a 1 inch length of the wood texture and cut that to size. Next, we can take a glue stick and apply some glue to the back of that texture, and then wrap that around one of the cardboard strips. Then I'll use the grid on the cutting board to measure out a length of 3 squares and cut it to size. I'll then repeat the process 3 more times so that I end up with 4 identical pieces. Okay, so now it's time to glue it all together, and I'll just apply a thin line of hot glue to the end of one of the shelves and then glue that to the side of another piece, like so. And it's also worth noting that I'm using the cutting board's grid again, just to help line things up and to get a nice right angle. Then I'll do the same again for the second shelf. Now I can add a spot of hot glue to the other ends of the shelves and simply glue on the other side piece. And there we go. But empty shelves aren't all that interesting, so let's make a few things to put on them. So for this next part, we're going to need some kind of foam mat. We'll also need a hole punch and something with a small round end, like the end of this paintbrush for example. Then we can take some of the floor texture and punch out a few holes. And it's these little circles that we're actually interested in, as we'll be using these to make a few plates. So if we then take a few of these circles and place them on the foam mat, printed side up, we can then use the end of the paintbrush to press them down into the foam and give them a bit of a bowl shape. And with any luck, they should end up looking something like this. But that's not the only thing we can use, and here's a bit of the sack texture that I've rolled up to look like a bolt of cloth. And once this and a couple of plates have been glued into place, it shouldn't actually look too bad. So now that everything's been glued down, here's a quick look at the 3 finished pieces, and as you can see, they've turned out rather nice. So here we have the bed and the rubbish pile, and if I just tilt this one back a little, you can see how much better it looks with just a few things added to the shelves. And I think that's it for this one, so as always, hit the like button if you've liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.